Welcome to Justice Insight Cam. Join us as we review factual police encounters documented by official body cameras. We look past the initial footage to evaluate the legal context, factual accuracy, and critical lessons within. Let us seek justice through clarity.
Back up, off the property. Now.
Officer, this is my home. I have the keys.
Step away from the door.
You need to verify before you touch me.
Back up, off the property. Now. The command hits the porch like a slap. A woman stands at the top of 3 wooden steps with a key in her hand. 1 foot inside the doorway, 1 foot on a faded mat. A police officer is planted at the bottom of the steps, squared shoulders, clipped tone, hand hovering near his holster like a reflex. Across the street, a porch light clicks on. Someone's phone screen glows behind a curtain, and for the next 60 seconds, every choice made here, every assumption, every escalation, will end up attached to a number that makes city officials go quiet when it's read aloud: $3.1 million. This is not a story about a burglary. It's a story about a black judge being treated like an intruder at her own home, and how one officer's insistence on control turned a routine call into a case the city couldn't explain away. Because when you order someone to get off her own property, you're not just enforcing the law, you're deciding who you believe belongs. To protect privacy, names, locations, and some details are reconstructed. This chain of events is a composite inspired by recurring patterns in public complaints and civil litigation. Her name is Judge Naomi Carter, 46, County Circuit Court, 12 years on the bench, known for steady rulings and a calm voice that doesn't rise even when everyone else's does. Outside the courthouse, she tries to live quietly. No speeches, no panels, no need to be recognized at the grocery store. Tonight, she isn't wearing a robe. She's wearing a thick coat, flat shoes, and fatigue, the kind that settles into your bones after a day of other people's crises. She's also carrying a cardboard folder, deed packet, probate documents, notarized paperwork, because the house she's opening isn't just an address. It belonged to her aunt, Renee Carter, her guardian when Naomi was a teenager, her anchor, her "you can do this" voice in the years when life felt unstable. Renee died 3 months ago. The legal process has been slow. Titles, locks, utility transfers, endless paper. And this is Naomi's first quiet hour to step inside and make the place real again. She pulls into the driveway at 6:38 p.m., sky already darkening, the street neat and silent in that expensive, unspoken way, trimmed lawns, matching mailboxes, no gates but plenty of expectation, keys in her right hand, folder in her left. She walks up the path, turns toward the front door, and someone decides she looks wrong for the neighborhood. The 911 call is quick, practiced. "Hi, I'm in Briar Glen. There's someone trying to get into the house at 14 Hawthorne. I don't recognize her. She's messing with the door." The dispatcher asks for a description. "Black female, dark coat. She keeps looking around." No mention of the keys, no mention of the car in the driveway, just suspicion dressed up as fear. Officer Evan Rourke gets the call in his cruiser. 34, 8 years on the job. Described as assertive, proactive, words that read well until you see what they look like on a camera. The call is logged as possible burglary in progress. Rourke turns in without siren, stops near the curb, headlights washing the front of the house. His body camera is already recording. Naomi doesn't know that. She's halfway through turning the key when the shout comes from behind. "Step back from the door. Hands where I can see them." Naomi freezes, not defiant, careful. She pivots slowly, raises her hands, keys dangling like proof. "Officer," she says, controlled, "this is my home. I'm opening the door. Rourke doesn't ask her name, doesn't ask her relationship to the property, doesn't ask the question that solves everything. Do you live here? He hears burglary, sees a black woman at a door in Briar Glen, and fills in the rest. Put the keys down, he says. Step away. Naomi tries to end it the simplest way. I can show you the deed packet and my ID, she says. I'm Judge Naomi Carter. You can verify. Rourke cuts her off with a short, dismissive laugh. Sure, he says, and I'm the governor. Naomi keeps her voice low, steady, the same tone she uses in court when someone's ego starts climbing. Officer, I understand you received a call, she says, but you need to verify before you— Ma'am, Rourke snaps, the word sharp. Back off the property, now. There it is, the line. Naomi feels the flash of anger, but she chooses safety over pride. She steps down one step. She holds the folder out slightly. Please, she says, read the paperwork. Call your supervisor. Run my name. Rourke doesn't take it. He steps closer. Don't reach into your pockets, he warns. I'm not reaching, Naomi replies. I'm offering documents. Rourke's breathing changes, adrenaline rising. Naomi notices the body camera on his chest. She notices the doorbell camera near the frame, and she makes a decision that matters later. Make sure that camera is recording, she says. Rourke's face tightens. Turn around, he orders. Hands behind your back. Naomi's stomach drops. Officer, she says, firmer now, you have no cause to put hands on me. I'm telling you who I am. Turn, he repeats. Naomi hesitates, one heartbeat too long. Rourke grabs her arm. Do not touch me without cause, Naomi says, sharp and clear. Rourke pivots her. She stumbles, catches the railing, keys clattering against wood, and then the click, handcuffs, cold metal on her wrists. Are you serious? Naomi asks, voice steady. You're handcuffing me on my own porch. Stop talking, Rourke says. You're being detained for burglary. With my keys? Naomi repeats. Rourke doesn't answer. He guides her down the steps and holds her on the walkway like an exhibit. A car slows. A neighbor's garage door lifts. Someone whispers, "Oh my God." And Naomi feels the humiliation settle in. Heavy, familiar, impossible to pretend doesn't matter. A second unit arrives. Officer Lena Alvarez. She takes one look, then picks up the folder from the mat. She opens it. Her posture shifts. Evan, she says, low. This says Naomi Carter. People forge paperwork, Rourke mutters. Alvarez doesn't argue. She radios dispatch. Confirm identity, Naomi Carter, judge. Static. A brief pause. Then the dispatcher's voice. Confirmed, Judge Naomi Carter. Address matches. Alvarez turns to Rourke. Take the cuffs off, she says. Rourke removes them fast, like speed can erase history. Naomi rubs her wrists. Red lines bloom. Rourke tries to patch the moment with words. We got a call, he says. You understand. Naomi meets his eyes. I understand why you came, she says quietly. I don't understand why you refuse to verify. Here's why this becomes explosive. Moments like this are easy to rewrite on paper. A report can say, non-compliant subject. A department can say, officer followed procedure. A city can say, no harm done. But 2 cameras caught it. The sarcasm, the refusal to check, the instant move to control. And once footage exists, polished statements can't scrub it clean. Naomi doesn't unpack boxes that night. She sits at the kitchen counter in the dim light, hands aching, not from pain, but from what the cuffs represent. She calls her sister, Mia, who drives over immediately and sits beside her in silence, staring at the red marks like they're a bruise on the idea of safety. Then Naomi does something most people never get to do. She calls the watch commander directly, not as a judge, not as someone throwing weight around, She's careful about that because she knows power can poison a complaint. She calls as a resident who was detained in error. The watch commander sends a sergeant. Sergeant Hollis arrives near 8:20 p.m. Body camera on, voice professional, face tight with the awareness that this should not be happening. He asks Naomi what happened. Naomi answers with the calm of someone who knows that emotion, however justified, becomes ammunition. Hollis listens, nods, then walks outside to speak with Rourke. The conversation is quiet, partly out of respect, partly out of fear of being recorded saying the wrong thing. When Hollis returns, his apology is careful. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience," he says. Inconvenience. Naomi looks at him and says, "I was handcuffed." Hollis swallows. "Yes, ma'am, I understand. We'll document it." Then he offers the sentence that always sounds like closure until you realize it isn't. "We'll look into it." 2 days later, Internal Affairs calls. Not to apologize, to take a statement. Naomi drives to the station in daylight, past the same manicured lawns, and walks into a small interview room that smells faintly of disinfectant and old coffee. An investigator turns on a recorder, asks her to recount the incident, then starts circling questions that feel less like fact-finding and more like blame-searching. "Were you upset? Did you raise your voice? Did you tell the officer you were a judge to avoid the investigation?" Naomi answers carefully. Yes, she was upset, because being handcuffed on your own porch is upsetting. No, she didn't raise her voice, and no, she didn't invoke her title to escape scrutiny. She invoked it because it was the fastest, safest verification available. Walking out of that room, Naomi realizes the most exhausting part isn't the incident. It's the way the system treats your complaint like something that needs to be managed, not corrected. Naomi has heard that sentence in court, in testimony, in internal affairs reports. Look into it, review it, assess it. Words that can mean accountability or can mean time, enough time for outrage to cool. Before Hollis leaves, Naomi asks one thing. "Preserve the footage," she says. "All of it. Body camera, dispatch audio, CAD logs, everything." Hollis nods. "Yes, ma'am." And for a moment, Naomi hopes that will be the end. An ugly mistake, a swift correction, a lesson learned. Then she sees what Rourke writes. The incident report is filed the next morning. Naomi's attorney obtains it through a records request, and the language reads like a different reality. Subject appeared nervous. Subject refused commands. Subject made statements suggesting authority. Temporary detention applied for officer safety. The line that stings the most is the cleanest one. Subject did not immediately comply. Naomi reads it twice. She was compliant. She was controlled. She was holding paperwork out, like a peace flag. But on paper, she becomes the problem. And now, Naomi understands something that makes her stomach drop even harder than the cuffs did. If this can be rewritten when the person is a judge, it can be rewritten for anyone. She files a formal complaint, not with flourish, with detail, timestamps, exact phrases, the location of the folder on the mat, the moment Rourke laughed at her title, the moment he refused to verify, the moment he chose handcuffs. The department responds with silence for days. Then an email. "We are reviewing the matter." Reviewing, not apologizing, not disciplining, not acknowledging the report's distortions. Naomi gives them time, reasonable time, because she's spent her life insisting people follow process. But process without urgency is how harm becomes routine. And while Naomi waits, the neighborhood talks. Briar Glen has its own ecosystem, a private social group, a neighborhood email list, a homeowners association that loves the word security. In that ecosystem, Naomi's presence becomes a debate. Some residents are embarrassed, some are defensive. Some say, we didn't know who she was, and some say the quiet part out loud in polite language. It's a safe neighborhood, one message reads. We have to protect what we've built. Protect from what? A woman with keys and paperwork? A week after the incident, Naomi learns that the person who called 911 has a history of suspicious person calls. Not crimes, people, teenagers walking, delivery drivers, visitors touring houses. Every call ends the same way. Officers arrive, ask questions, leave. No arrests, no charges. Just a reminder to the suspect that someone is watching. Naomi doesn't know the caller's name yet. She doesn't need it to understand the pattern. Because Naomi knows the pattern intimately, she's seen it arrive in her courtroom, disguised as reasonable. Suspicion. She's thrown out cases where suspicion had nothing to do with facts and everything to do with discomfort. She's written rulings that remind officers the Constitution doesn't shrink in wealthy neighborhoods. And that is where the story takes a darker shape. Because there is a detail Naomi doesn't connect until later. A detail that turns this from bias into something that looks uncomfortably like motive. 2 years earlier, Officer Evan Rourke testified in Naomi's courtroom. It was a case involving a traffic stop on the edge of town. Nothing glamorous, nothing headline-worthy. Rourke was the arresting officer. The defense challenged the stop. Naomi asked questions, pressed for specifics, refused to accept vague language. Rourke's report said the driver looked suspicious. Naomi asked what exactly that meant. What movement? What behavior? What fact? Rourke couldn't articulate it. Naomi suppressed the evidence, not as punishment, as law. And in her written order, she used a phrase that stuck with people who read it. Uncorroborated assumptions are not probable cause. Rourke was not disciplined for that case. His supervisors told him it was part of the job. But he felt humiliated. He felt exposed. He felt like a judge had made him look small in a room where he expected to be unquestioned. In deposition later, Naomi's attorneys ask him if he recognized her on the porch. Rourke says no. But the body cam footage shows something interesting. The moment Naomi says, "I'm Judge Naomi Carter," Rourke doesn't pause to verify. He laughs, not confused laughter, dismissive laughter, as if the title isn't new information, but an annoyance, as if he doesn't want her to be that person, as if the idea itself threatens the story he already built in his head. Naomi doesn't claim she knows what was in his mind, but she knows what the camera shows. He heard her identity, and he still escalated. And whether or not he recognized her face, he recognized the name. Because the case file proves he had seen it before. That becomes the fourth spark. Not just bias, history. When Naomi's attorney sends a preservation letter to the city responds with a standard statement. We take all complaints seriously. Then they delay releasing the body cam footage longer than policy allows. That delay invites reporters. A local journalist hears about it through a neighbor's post. They handcuffed a judge for trying to enter her own house. The details are messy, but the hook is undeniable. Naomi releases a written statement instead of chasing cameras. This happened to me with a title, she writes. It happens to countless others without one. The line lands because it doesn't feel like messaging. It feels like a fact. A week later, part of the footage leaks. Not the whole clip, not the beginning. Just the moment where Naomi says, "She's a judge," and the officer laughs. The internet does what it always does. It chooses a villain, chooses a hero, chooses a storyline. Some people call Rourke a racist. Others call Naomi privileged for having leverage. Some claim it's fake. Some claim it's staged. Then the full doorbell camera clip surfaces and the argument shifts. Because the doorbell camera doesn't care about narratives. It shows keys, paperwork, no forced entry. And it shows handcuffs. That's when the city realizes the case is no longer internal. It's public, it's emotional, and it's backed by video. 2 months later, the lawsuit arrives. Civil rights claims, unlawful detention, excessive force, false arrest, failure to train, failure to supervise, emotional distress. The city's lawyers argue reasonable suspicion. They say it was a burglary call. They call the cuffs temporary. They emphasize that Naomi was released quickly, as if speed can erase humiliation. Then discovery begins, and discovery is where excuses get tested. Naomi's team demands dispatch audio, CAD logs, training records, prior complaints, policies, internal emails. The city pushes back. The court orders production, and the story reframes itself. Because the twist isn't simply what Rourke did, it's what the system fed him. The dispatch log contains a note that never appears in the city's public statement. Caller states subject does not match neighborhood. Not forced entry, not window broken, not door kicked. Mismatch. That single word matters because it turns the call into something else. Not a report of a crime, but a report of discomfort. Then Naomi's attorneys subpoena the caller's history of complaints. The pattern is plain. The neighborhood has learned that "I don't recognize them" is enough to summon police. In a deposition, the dispatcher admits the phrase "does not match neighborhood" isn't unusual. It shows up in calls from certain areas. It's not supposed to guide action, but in practice it becomes a shortcut, an unspoken instruction to arrive fast and assume the worst. Another deposition follows. The watch commander. He is asked why the footage release was delayed. He cites workload, processing, policy. Then an email is produced showing a supervisor asking, "Can we hold this until legal reviews?" Hold it. Not to protect an investigation, to manage fallout. Then the training records appear, and they tell their own story. Rourke has completed standard modules. Use of force, report writing, legal updates. There is bias training, but it's thin. Check the box. One afternoon every few years. Easy to pass, easy to forget. And there is no clear policy requiring officers to examine ownership documents during property calls when there is no sign of forced entry. Meaning, the system left room for instinct. And instinct, in a place like Briar Glen, often means mismatch equals threat. Then there's Rourke, 2 prior complaints for unnecessary escalation during contacts with black residents, both marked not sustained for lack of proof. This time, the proof is a video. During deposition, the questions are brutally simple. Did you ask Ms. Carter for her name? I don't recall. Did you request identification before ordering her off the property? I believed she was a suspect. Did you look at the documents she offered? No. Why not? And the answer, under oath, is the moment the case hardens. Because suspects lie, Rourke says, not because Naomi lied, because he decided from the start that she was a suspect. When asked why he chose handcuffs over verification, he says, officer safety, but he cannot identify a single specific fact that made Naomi dangerous. No weapon, no threat, no forced entry, just presence, just mismatch. And then comes the line Naomi's. Attorneys circle in red. Rourke admits that once Naomi said she was a judge, he thought she might be trying to intimidate him. In other words, her identity, instead of de-escalating, made him feel challenged. And challenged authority is where escalation lives. If you've ever watched footage like this and felt your stomach drop, you already understand what jurors understand. Procedure without respect can become abuse in seconds. Inside City Hall, panic grows quiet and strategic. Emails circulate about optics, exposure, precedent. Because if a jury watches that video, the jury won't just judge Rourke. They'll judge the department. They'll judge training. They'll judge supervision. They'll ask why the report tried to reshape reality. They'll ask why footage was delayed. And they'll ask the question that scares cities the most. If this happened to a judge, what happens to everyone else? Then another piece of evidence surfaces. Supervisor's text from the night of the incident. "Keep it tight in Briar Glen," it reads. "They want us quick. Don't let them walk all over you." It's not an explicit order to discriminate, but it is a cultural instruction, an encouragement to treat community anxiety as a demand for dominance. It supports Naomi's claim that this wasn't one mistake. It was a predictable outcome in a system that prizes control over verification. The city attempts a quiet settlement first, a check with a confidentiality clause. No policy change, no oversight, just silence. Naomi refuses, not because she wants attention, because she knows what silence does. It turns a public wrong into a private inconvenience, and it lets the next person take the cuffs alone. So the negotiations drag, and they keep circling the same truth. A jury, a video, a pattern. Eventually, the city offers what it has been trying to avoid. $3.1 million. No admission of liability. Cities rarely admit liability. But the terms include changes, mandatory verification steps before detention when there is no sign of forced entry, a requirement to examine offered documents unless safety clearly prevents it, expanded bias training with independent oversight, an audit of suspicious person calls in neighborhoods where suspicion has become shorthand for "I don't recognize them." There's also a new dispatch protocol. When a caller describes someone as not belonging, dispatchers are trained to ask for objective facts. What exactly is happening? What exactly was seen? What exactly indicates a crime? Rourke is placed on leave during the process. When the settlement becomes public, he resigns. Some call it accountability. Others call it an exit before termination. Either way, he's gone, and the neighborhood is left with an uncomfortable mirror. Because the officer didn't invent the suspicion, he acted on it, and the system rewarded speed over verification until the bill came due. At the city council meeting where the settlement is approved, residents argue over the price, over blame, over shame. Naomi speaks briefly, not like a politician, but like a woman trying to name something real. "This is not about a number," she tells them. "It's about what we accept as normal." She pauses. "I had documents in my hand," she says, "keys in my hand, and I still had to prove I belonged in my own doorway." Then she steps away. No speech, no victory lap, just a quiet refusal to let the story be minimized. If you were sitting in that room, listening to people debate whether her humiliation was worth $3 million, what would you have said? Would you have stayed quiet? Or would you have asked the one question that matters? Why did it happen at all? Weeks later, Naomi returns to the house alone. The street looks the same. Neat lawns, tidy mailboxes, quiet comfort. But Naomi notices what she didn't notice before. The way curtains move when she walks up the path. The way suspicion can live in a neighborhood like a habit. The porch boards creak on the third step, exactly as she remembers. She stops under the doorbell camera and looks at it for a moment. Small plastic, cheap glass, a witness that did what institutions sometimes refuse to do, tell the truth without flinching. Naomi opens the door, steps inside, and turns on the light. The house smells like old paper and cedar, like Renee's life still clinging to the corners. She sets the folder down on the kitchen table and runs her fingers over the wood, feeling the faint groove where her aunt once pressed too hard while writing a list. Then Naomi exhales, long, steady, and lets herself feel what she didn't allow on the porch. Not fear, not even anger. Grief for how easy it is to be turned into a suspect, and gratitude that this time the truth was recorded. Because the Officer's command, off the property, was not the final word. The final word was evidence, policies, a settlement that forced a city to admit, at least in action, that verification matters more than assumption, that you cannot treat discomfort as probable cause. And the next time dispatch gets a call that sounds like she doesn't match, there are new questions on the screen. Is there forced entry? Are there keys? Is there a vehicle in the driveway? Did the caller describe a crime, or just a person they didn't recognize? Those questions won't fix everything, but they add friction. And sometimes, friction is what stops a bad instinct from becoming a handcuff. So here's the takeaway Naomi never asked to carry, but now refuses to drop. The most dangerous phrase in a neighborhood like Briar Glen is not burglary, it's doesn't match. Because doesn't match was never about crime. It was about belonging. And on one cold Tuesday night, a judge stood on her own porch and had to prove the obvious, until the cameras made the obvious undeniable. $3.1 million was the bill the city wrote, but the real cost, the one you can't measure, was paid the moment those cuffs clicked shut, and the moment the neighborhood saw who was allowed to be home without question.
Thanks for staying until the end. If this review offered a fresh viewpoint, please like, share, and subscribe to Justice Insight Cam. Stay alert, stay out of harm's way, and we will catch you next episode.